My name is Ruby Bennett, and at 32 years old, you can't leave your sister, my mom begged. 6 hours later, I moved to Singapore. Their voicemails flooded my inbox, but I blocked them all. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. The text arrived at 11:45 a.m. on a Thursday. My phone buzzed with Emma's message as I was sitting in my cubicle, halfway through a turkey sandwich. Hey, sis, big news. I'm finally doing it. I'm quitting the salon tomorrow. Dylan and I talked about it, and we decided I need time to find myself, to figure out what I really want to do in life. You'll take care of us while I figure things out, right? I know you have that great job and no kids, so it just makes sense. We can move in next weekend. I read it 3 times. Each time my blood pressure rose slightly. My sister Emma was 32 years old, 2 years younger than me. She'd been working as a receptionist at a hair salon for the past 5 years, earning good money through tips. Dylan, her boyfriend, was 35 and worked sporadically as a freelance graphic designer, which mostly involved playing video games and occasionally updating someone's logo. They'd been together for 3 years, living in a cramped apartment that his parents had partially funded. I sat down with my sandwich. My hands were shaking. The audacity was almost impressive. Almost? I typed back, "That's not on me." 3 small dots appeared, disappeared, and reappeared. "What do you mean? We're family. This is what family does." I didn't respond. Instead, I went straight to my manager's office and inquired whether the Singapore position was still open, the one they've been attempting to fill for 2 months, the one that included a significant salary increase, a full relocation package, and a 3-year contract beginning Monday. "You're interested?" Lena asked, stunned. "You said you couldn't possibly move internationally." "I changed my mind. I want it. I'll sign today." 6 hours later, I received a contract via email. I signed it electronically at 6:26 p.m. while sitting in my car in the parking lot. My hands remained steady this time. Mom's text arrived at 6:38 p.m. Sophie Marie Richardson. "Your sister just called me sobbing. She said you refuse to help her when she needs you most. How could you be so selfish? She's family. We take care of family. Call me immediately." I was staring at the message. Guilt tried to creep in the same way it had throughout my life. However, something was different now. Something finally snapped. I called Mom. "Ruby, thank God. Listen, Emma is really struggling right now." "Mom, I'm moving to Singapore on Monday. I accepted a job transfer. I won't be able to help Emma because I'll be living on the other side of the world." There is silence. Complete silence. "You are what? Moving to Singapore for at least 2 years? Maybe longer? You can't be serious? You can't just leave your family when we need you." "Actually, I can. I already signed the contract." This is because of Emma's text, isn't it? You're being petty and spiteful. Something in me cracked open years of something I'd been holding back. "You want to know what's petty, Mom? I'll tell you a story. Let me tell you about the last 14 years of my life." "No, Ruby, you're going to listen." I was 17 when my father died. Heart attack, sudden and brutal. He was the parent who saw me, attended my track meets, and assisted me with my calculus homework. Mom had always been more attached to Emma, her baby girl, who required more attention, support, and everything. I was getting ready for school that morning when it happened. Dad had been drinking coffee at the kitchen table and reading the newspaper, as he did every morning. He smiled at me and asked if I was prepared for my history presentation. I had said yes. He told me how proud he was of me. 20 minutes later, Mom screamed from their bedroom. The funeral was crowded with people. Dad had a good reputation at his engineering firm and was active in our community. Everyone told stories about his kindness, humor, and generosity. I stood there in a black dress borrowed from my friend Tara, shaking hands and accepting condolences from strangers despite feeling completely numb. Emma couldn't even complete the service. She had a panic attack halfway through, and her mother had to take her out. I'd sat alone in that pew, listening to the pastor talk about a man I'd never see again, and something inside me had become very quiet and still. After Dad died, everything changed. I was beginning my senior year. Emma was 15 years old when she fell completely apart. I realized that grief is different for everyone. Emma received therapy, extended absences from school, and Mom's constant hovering, whereas I received expectations. "You're so strong, Ruby. You're handling this so well. I need you to be strong for your sister." I didn't get to fall apart. I needed to maintain my grades because I had already applied for scholarships. I had to enroll in college because we couldn't afford it otherwise. I had to work 20 hours per week at the grocery store to help with bills, while Emma could focus on her recovery. I received a full ride to UCLA. Mom cried, but they weren't happy tears. It's so far away. How can you leave us right now? Emma still needs you. I need you. Emma had gotten upset when I showed her my acceptance letter, actually threw things across the room. She'd screamed that I was abandoning her, that I didn't care about the family, and that I was selfish for applying somewhere so far away. You could go to community college here, Mom said, her voice tightening. Save money and stay close to home where you're needed. However, the scholarship covered everything: room, board, tuition, and books. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and part of me knew that if I didn't seize it, I'd never be able to escape the role they had assigned to me. I went anyway. It was the first selfish act I'd ever committed, and the guilt nearly killed me. Throughout my first month at UCLA, I called home every day. Emma refused to speak to me. Mom would get on the phone and sigh heavily, telling me how Emma had cried all through dinner, locked herself in her room for hours, and wasn't eating properly. She misses you so much, Mom would say. The implication was clear. This is your fault. I'd offered to return home on weekends. Mom said it would just make it harder for me to leave again. I offered to video chat with Emma. She had refused. I had sent care packages, long letters, and funny cards. They went unanswered. By October, I was having panic attacks in my dorm room, convinced that I had made a huge mistake. My roommate, a girl named Rachel from Portland, finally sat me down. Your family is manipulating you, she said bluntly. Can't you see it? They want you to feel so guilty that you'll drop out and come home. I defended them. Of course, they weren't manipulating me. They were just grieving and struggling. But Rachel's words had planted a seed. During college, I worked 2 jobs while maintaining a 3.9 GPA, called home 3 times a week, and returned home for every holiday, paying for plane tickets I couldn't afford. Emma went to community college for 1 semester before dropping out to pursue her passion. When I graduated and got my first real job, I began sending money home, not because anyone asked, but because Mom casually mentioned that the electric bill was high this month, Emma needed new tires, or the house needed repairs. My starting salary was $55,000 per year, which seemed like a fortune after being a broke college student, but after taxes, rent, student loans for the small amount not covered by scholarships, and the constant flow of money back home, I was barely scraping by. I recall one particularly awful month when I sent $650 to cover Emma's car insurance after she had let it lapse. That same week, my own car had broken down, and I needed $400 for repairs. I didn't have it, so I had to borrow money from Rachel, who by then was working in Seattle but still my closest friend. This is insane, she told me over the phone. You're going into debt to fund your sister's irresponsibility. It's just temporary, I'd insisted, until she gets on her feet. Ruby, she's never going to get on her feet if you keep catching her every time she falls. I paid Rachel back over 3 months, $50 at a time. Emma moved out at 23 to live with her first serious boyfriend, Ethan. That lasted 8 months before he kicked her out for cheating on him. She moved back home. Mom called me crying about how heartbroken Emma was, how she needed support. The call had come at 2 a.m. I'd been asleep, exhausted from a 14-hour workday. Mom had been nearly hysterical. She won't stop crying. She will not eat. Ruby, I'm very worried about her. Can you come home this weekend? She needs to see you. She needs to know her family is here for her. I'd taken a personal day on Friday, driven 4 hours home, and spent the weekend listening to Emma sob about Ethan and how he'd never appreciated her and how all men were trash. She'd barely acknowledged my presence except to accept my sympathy, and as I was leaving Sunday night, she asked if I could leave her some money for gas and food. Mom was overjoyed when Emma moved in with Dylan after 3 months, saying, "See, she's finally getting her life together." I gave her $150, every dollar I had in my wallet, money I budgeted for groceries that week. I also sent $1,000 to cover Emma's credit card debt from the relationship. I'm very relieved. You must be too. I was sincere, and I hoped Emma had found happiness. But over the years, the calls began again. Could I help with Emma's car payment just once? Could I lend them money for rent? Could I cover their pet deposit when they got a dog? Each request came with assurances that it was the last time they were getting back on track, and I said yes every time. Last Christmas, I spent $800 on gifts for Emma, Dylan, and Mom, and flew home for 4 days, spending another $650 on plane tickets. Emma gave me a $15 candle from Target, and Mom gave me a framed photo of Emma and me from childhood, which I suspected had been in the attic for years. The candle still had a price sticker on the bottom, and I discovered it later when I unpacked, tucked in my suitcase. I'd sat on my bed in my empty apartment, holding that stupid candle, and something inside me had cracked. Not broken, but cracked like a windshield before it shatters completely. I bought Emma a professional makeup kit she'd mentioned wanting for $300. On Christmas Eve, Emma informed me that she was considering going back to school for massage therapy, which would cost $7,500. I had spent hours picking out thoughtful gifts to show Dylan that I cared and that I was grateful to be a part of the family. Mom received a spa day package for $275. The entire family had gathered in the living room. Mom, Emma, Dylan, Aunt Claire, Uncle Jack, and a couple of cousins. Emma had announced it as if it were exciting news, but her gaze had been on me the entire time. "That's great," I'd said. "How are you going to pay for it?" The room had become quiet, and Emma's smile had faltered. "Well, I hoped. You've always been so helpful in assisting me with my future investments. For example, the money I had given her over the years was invested in a dividend-paying mutual fund." "I'll think about it," I said before changing the subject. Mom later pulled me aside. "You know you're in a better position to help. You don't have kids. You make good money. Emma is really trying to improve her life." I said I would. I never did. Emma never brought it up again, which showed me how serious she was. But here's what I found out months later, from a cousin who felt bad for keeping quiet. Emma had already been accepted to the program. She had been telling everyone for weeks that I was paying for it. She boasted about her generous older sister, who had funded her career change. When the tuition deadline passed and I had not sent money, she informed everyone that I had backed out at the last minute, that I promised to help but then changed my mind, that I had let her down. I had been cast as the villain in a story I had no idea I was involved in. 3 months ago, Emma texted me and asked if I could co-sign a loan for a new car. Hers was old, but still functional. She preferred something nicer. I had said no for the first time in my life. Emma did not speak with me for 2 weeks. When she finally did, she acted as if nothing had happened, but her texts had a cold edge. All of this came pouring out to Mom over the phone. 14 years of being the responsible one, the strong one, the one who put everyone else's comfort ahead of their own. "I have given everything to this family," I explained, my voice eerily calm. "I supported myself through college. I worked myself to exhaustion, sent money I didn't have, and repeatedly put my own life on hold. And you know what I realized today, Mom? Nobody has ever asked me what I need or what I want. Not once in 14 years. "That's not fair, Ruby. We've always appreciated, have you? Because appreciation doesn't require more money. Appreciation would have asked me how I was doing when Dad died, rather than telling me to be strong for Emma, and it would have celebrated my accomplishments rather than making me feel guilty for having them." Mom's voice became sharper. "Your father would be so disappointed in you right now." "No, Mom. Dad would be proud that I'm finally putting myself first. He's the one who taught me I was worth something. You're the one who taught me I was only valuable for what I could give everyone else." I hung up. My hands were shaking again, but this time from adrenaline, not anger. The following 3 days were chaotic. Emma called me 17 times. I didn't respond. She left voicemails ranging from hurt, angry, and desperate. "How can you do this to me? I'm your sister. You're being a selfish C, and I hope you realize that. Please live. Please talk to me. I'm scared and don't know what to do." I listened to each voicemail once before deleting it. Some part of me needed to hear them to understand what I was leaving behind. In her last message, her voice was small and broken, as if she were terrified. The old me would have crumbled, called back, apologized, and worked out a compromise. The new me pressed delete and continued packing. Mom texted me long paragraphs about family obligations, how I was ignoring them, and how she had raised me better than this. She tried guilt, anger, and then bargaining. "What if Emma promises to get another job right away? What if she only stays with you for a few months? What if we all sit down and talk about this?" In addition to Mom's messages, there were texts from Emma's friends, people I barely knew. Emma appears to have rallied her troops, telling them that her heartless sister was abandoning her in her time of need. "How can you do this to Emma? She's always talked about how close you two are. Family is supposed to be there for each other. This is really messed up. I hope you can live with yourself." I disconnected all the phones I didn't recognize, then I blocked some of them. My own friends had a different story. Jessica, who I'd known since college, had texted me, "Fucking finally. I'm so proud of you. Let me know if you need any assistance packing." Rachel called from Seattle. "Oh my God, you actually did it. You actually chose yourself." "Ruby, I'm legitimately emotional right now. This is the best thing you've ever done." My coworker, Amanda, with whom I'd had a few drinks, sent word about Singapore. "That is incredible. Let me know if you need any recommendations. My brother lived there for 2 years." The contrast was striking. People who genuinely cared for me were enthusiastic and supportive. People who saw me as a resource became enraged and attacked. On Friday afternoon, I received a Facebook message from Ethan, Emma's ex-boyfriend from years ago. "Hey, I heard about what's going on, and I just wanted to say good for you. Emma told everyone I was the bad guy when we broke up, but the truth is she was using me the entire time, cheating on me, maxing out a credit card I stupidly added her to, and then playing the victim when I kicked her out. I'm guessing she's doing the same thing to you now. You're wise to leave. Good luck in Singapore." I stared at that message for a long time. Emma had always portrayed herself as a victim in that relationship. The sweet girlfriend is betrayed by her cruel boyfriend. I trusted her because she was my sister. Family believes in family. How much of my beliefs about my family were true? How many stories had I believed without question because it was easier than confronting reality? I responded once, "I'm moving to Singapore on Monday. This decision is final. I need space from both of you." Then I muted their phones. My best friend Jessica came over on Saturday to help me pack. She had known about my family's situation for years and had become increasingly vocal about how they treated me. "I'm so proud of you," she said, wrapping my dishes in newspaper. "Do you know how many times I've watched them bleed you dry? How many times I've bitten my tongue while you made excuses for them? Why didn't you say something?" Would you have listened? She had the right idea. I would not have. I'd fallen too deep into the pattern, too conditioned to believe that being a good daughter and sister required sacrificing everything. Sunday morning, I received an email from Mom. The subject line said, "Please read important." The email was long. She clearly invested time in it. It mentioned how she had been reflecting on our conversation, how she may have put too much pressure on me over the years, and how she wanted to understand my point of view. It was almost enough to make me reconsider, but then I got to the final paragraph. "According to me, I really think you're making a huge mistake with this Singapore job. It's so far away. And what if something happens to Emma or me? What if we need you? I think you should reconsider. There will be other job opportunities, but you only have one family. Please think about what's really important here. Love, Mom." I removed the message. Monday morning has arrived. My apartment was empty, except for the few suitcases I was bringing with me. Everything else was stored. I would stay in corporate housing in Singapore until I found my own place. My phone rang while I was loading my car to drive to the airport, a number I did not recognize. Against my better judgment, I responded, "Ruby, it's Dylan." I almost hung up. "What do you want?" "Listen, I know things are messed up right now, but you have to understand how hard this is for Emma. She's been crying for days. She really thought you'd help us out." "Did Emma put you up to calling me?" "No, she's really upset, and I'm worried about her. We were counting on you." "You were counting on me funding your girlfriend's unemployment while she finds herself. Do you realize how insane that sounds?" "It isn't like that. She just needs some time to plan her next move. Why can't you support her? You are her boyfriend." Silence. My design work is currently inconsistent, and my parents threatened to cut me off if Emma moved back in with me at their place. "So your plan was to hold me responsible for both of you. You don't have children. You make money. It's not like it would have been too difficult for you." The entitlement was staggering. "This conversation is over. Do not call me again." I hung up and blocked the number. The flight to Singapore lasted 14 hours with a layover in Tokyo. I spent the majority of it sleeping, the type of deep, dreamless sleep I hadn't had in years. My body understood what my mind was still processing. I was finally free. Singapore felt overwhelming at first. The humidity, the crowds, and the incredible diversity of languages and cultures. My corporate apartment was small but modern, with a view of Marina Bay. My new office was sleek and professional, and my coworkers were welcoming. The first week was a blur of orientation meetings, paperwork, and adjusting to the time difference. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. wide awake with my body insisting it was afternoon. I'd stumble to my apartment's tiny balcony and watch the city wake up, with lights flickering on and buildings across the bay. Everything was different here: food, weather hole, and pace of life. The MRT, Singapore's subway system, was cleaner and more efficient than anything I had seen in California. People actually queued politely rather than cramming into trains. The streets were spotless. There were rules for everything, and everybody followed them. I had expected to feel lonely. Instead, I felt lighter. My first project was a regional marketing analysis for teams in Singapore, Hong Kong, and Sydney. My manager, Lena, was a sharp woman in her 40s who had moved to Singapore from Taiwan 14 years prior. During our first one-on-one, she gave me a careful look. "You seem relieved to be here," she'd said. Not excited. Relieved? Are you running from or towards something? I hesitated before deciding to be honest. Both, I believe. She nodded. Good answer. Running away from something is fine as long as you're creating something better. Just make sure you don't spend so much time running that you forget to live. This was sound advice. For the first 2 weeks, I kept my phone in airplane mode, except for checking work emails. I knew I was avoiding the inevitable, but I needed the time to adjust to my new life without the constant weight of home dragging me down. When I finally turned on my messaging apps, I received 135 texts from Mom and 92 from Emma. I did not read most of them. The preview text was sufficient, but there was also a message from my Aunt Beth, my father's sister. We had always gotten along, but she lived in Oregon, so I only saw her every few years. "Hey, Ruby, your mom called me upset about you moving to Singapore. I told her it sounded like an amazing opportunity, and she should be proud. She didn't like that. Anyway, I wanted to say I'm happy for you. Your dad would be too. You're doing the right thing. Love you, Hito." The message made me weep. These were the first real tears I'd shed throughout this ordeal. Work was incredible, challenging, and engaging, just what I needed. My boss, Lena, was both brilliant and supportive. My team was talented and collaborative. I was learning new systems, contributing to large projects, and feeling truly valued for the first time in my career. One afternoon, about a month later, I stayed late to finish a presentation. Around 6:30 p.m., Lena came by my desk. "Are you still here? Are you just finishing up the Hong Kong analysis?" she asked, pulling up a chair. "Can I tell you something? When we hired you, I looked at your resume and saw someone who was severely underpaid and underpromoted for your skill level. You had been at your previous company for 5 years with little advancement, which usually tells me one of two things. Either the employee is mediocre, or they are being taken advantage of. Your work told me it wasn't the first option." I had no idea what to say. "I'm telling you this because I see you doing it again. Staying late every night, volunteering for extra projects, working through lunch. You're excellent at your job. You don't have to prove anything. I just want to make sure I'm contributing." "You're contributing plenty during business hours. Go home, Ruby. Actually, live in this city you moved to. Otherwise, what was the point of coming here?" She wasn't incorrect. I had been replacing one type of self-sacrifice with another. I made friends, real friends, who didn't know my history and saw me as Ruby, not the responsible sister or the ATM daughter. I visited hawker centers and tried every type of food I could find. I visited the gardens by the bay and Sentosa Island. I went on a weekend trip to Bali. My cubicle neighbor, James from Australia, invited me to a board game night hosted by his wife on Fridays. That's where I met Nina, who worked in finance and had a dry, cutting sense of humor that made me laugh so hard my stomach hurt. We bonded over our shared experience with domineering mothers and became fast friends. Nina helped me meet more people. Her rock climbing group, her book club, and her husband's cricket team were always looking for people to come watch and drink beer. Suddenly, my calendar was full of actual social gatherings with people who had invited me because they enjoyed my company, not because they needed something from me. I was truly, surprisingly happy. 6 weeks into my new life, I had finally unblocked Mom and Emma. The messages that came in were a journey. The first few weeks had been filled with anger and guilt. Then came the bargaining phase, with promises that things would be different if I simply returned home. Then there was confusion as to why I hadn't responded. Finally, there has been radio silence for the past 3 weeks. I messaged the family group chat, which included Mom, Emma, and a few aunts and uncles. "Hi, everyone. I wanted to let you know I'm settled in Singapore and doing well. This has been an incredible opportunity, and I'm really happy with my decision. I need everyone to understand that I'm not available for financial support anymore. I'm not a backup plan or a safety net. I love you all, but I need to prioritize my own life right now. I hope you can respect this." The responses were mixed. Aunt Beth sent the heart emoji. Uncle Jack, Dad's brother, wrote, "Good for you, kiddo." A couple of cousins sent, "Congratulations." Mom wrote, I'm glad you're safe. I wish you'd answer when I call. We have a lot to talk about. Emma did not respond at all. 3 months in, Emma sent me an email. This is an actual email, not a text message. Ruby, I don't know what to say. I've been very angry at you, but Jessica told me something that made me think. I've been taking advantage of you for years and didn't even realize it. I got defensive at first, but then I really thought about it, about all the times you helped me and how I never really appreciated it or even thanked you properly. I don't know if this matters now, but I got a job, 2 jobs, actually. I'm working at a different salon and bartending 3 nights a week. Dylan and I split up. He wasn't willing to work harder, and I realized I was dating someone who wanted to coast on other people's money, just like I was doing. I'm not asking you to forgive me or come back, but I wanted you to know I'm trying to do better. I'm sorry for how I treated you. You deserve better from me. I reread the email 5 times. It felt authentic in a way that Emma's communication rarely did, raw and honest. I responded, "Thanks for reaching out. I'm proud of you for taking those steps. I hope you keep it up. I'm not ready for regular communication yet, but I appreciate the apology. Take care of yourself." It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was something. I slammed the door shut, leaving a small opening. Mom was harder. She called once a month, usually around dinner time, which was early morning for her. The few times I responded, the conversations were strained. She struggled to ask about my life without delving into her own problems or making me feel guilty for being away. After one particularly frustrating call in which she spent 40 minutes complaining about how difficult it was to manage everything alone, I said something I had been holding back. "Mom, I love you, but you need to hear this. You made me responsible for keeping this family together when I was 17 years old, and you placed adult responsibilities on me while Emma remained a child. You taught me that my worth was determined by what I could offer, not by who I was. That is why I left. I did not leave to punish you. I left to save myself." She remained silent for a long time. "I did the best I could after your father died. I know you did, but your best wasn't good for me, and I need you to acknowledge that instead of making me feel guilty about protecting myself." Another prolonged pause. "I'll try. This is hard for me, Ruby. It's been hard for me for 14 years. Mom, we hung up shortly after, and she didn't call again for 5 weeks. Year 2 in Singapore brought promotions and new adventures, and I began dating a software engineer named Jacob from Chicago. We bonded over being American expats and our shared love of terrible action movies. It wasn't serious, but it was fun, healthy, and uncomplicated. I traveled to Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia. I discovered I enjoyed rock climbing at an indoor gym. I made a close friend named Nina who worked in my building and shared my dark sense of humor. And I didn't think about home anymore. Not because I had forgotten, but because I had built a life that did not revolve around other people's needs. Emma sent occasional updates via email. She had been promoted to assistant manager at the salon. She was dating a new teacher who appeared stable, and she had begun paying off her credit card debt. The emails were brief but consistent, and I appreciated them more than long apologies would have meant. Mom and I talked every other month, and while the conversations were still awkward, they were less fraught. She was learning to ask about my life without immediately pivoting to her own struggles, which was progress, even if it was slow. Then came the call that changed everything. It was 2 years and 4 months after I had left, and Mom called on a Tuesday, which was unusual. Her voice was shaky. "Ruby, I need to tell you something. I visited the doctor last week. They discovered something during my mammogram. It is breast cancer, stage 2. My stomach dropped. "What is the treatment plan?" "A lumpectomy followed by radiation. They are optimistic about the prognosis, but I am scared, honey. I'm really scared." For the first time in years, she sounded like she actually needed me. Not my money or my sacrifice, but just me. "I'm here, Mom. I can't fly home right now due to work, but I am here. We will get through this." Over the next few months, we talked weekly about her fears, her treatment, her life. She told me stories about Dad I'd never heard. She inquired about my work, my friends, my relationship with Jacob, and she apologized for the pressure she'd put on me. "I was so overwhelmed after your father died. Emma was falling apart, and you appeared to be so strong. I relied on you because you were capable, but I never considered whether you should have done the same. I took your strength for granted and turned you into a parent when you should have just been my daughter. I'm sorry." I'm sorry I cried during that conversation, the kind of crying that releases years of pain. "Thank you for saying that, Mom." Emma stepped up during Mom's treatment. She drove her to appointments, stayed with her after surgery, and managed her medications. She sent me updates and photos. In one picture, she and Mom were making silly faces in the hospital, Mom in a gown and Emma in a ridiculous wig from the gift shop. Trying to keep spirits up, Emma texted, "We miss you, though." "You're doing great," I responded. "I'm proud of you." Mom's treatment was successful. By month 6, her scans were clear, and the relief was overwhelming. I flew home for a week during her final radiation treatment. It was strange to be back in California in my childhood home. Everything felt smaller somehow. Emma picked me up from the airport. She looked different, more mature, more grounded. She hugged me tight and held on for longer than I expected. "I really missed you, Liv." "I missed you too." The week was surprisingly good. We didn't fall back into old patterns, and Emma didn't ask for anything but my time. Mom didn't make me feel bad about being away. We cooked together, watched movies, and looked through old photo albums. On my last night, we sat in the backyard with wine and the photo album spread around us. "I almost destroyed this family," Mom said quietly. "When you left, I was so angry. I couldn't understand why you'd abandoned us. But you did not abandon us. You've saved yourself." As I watched Emma mature over the last few months, becoming more responsible and capable, I realized I had been enabling her for many years. Enabling both of us. "Really? We needed you to leave." "I didn't want to hurt you," I said. "I understand, but you had to hurt us to help us." Emma wiped her eyes. "That's a terrible position to put someone in. I was so mad at you for leaving. I felt abandoned, but Jessica was correct. I treated you like a bank account, not as a sister. I didn't even recognize you as a real person with personal needs. You were only there to help me. I'm ashamed of that now." "You've grown up a lot," I told her. "I had to. You weren't there to catch me anymore." It was the most open conversation we'd ever had as a family, and I flew back to Singapore the following day. Jacob picked me up at the airport. "How was it?" he asked. "Healing," I said. "Actually healing." 3 years into my contract, my company offered me a permanent position with another significant raise. I signed without hesitation. Singapore was now home, and Emma came to visit 6 months later, paying her own way. "I get why you stayed," she said on her last night. "This place is amazing, and you're different here." She stayed for a week, and we did all the tourist things. She marveled at the Bayside Gardens, ate her way through Chinatown, and took about 1,000 photos. "Lighter. I am the person I was meant to be," I replied. "I like this version of you. I'm sorry it took losing you to find her." "You did not lose me. We just needed distance to find a better way to be sisters." We hugged at the airport, and this time when we said goodbye, it didn't feel like an ending, but like a new chapter. Mom had never visited. International travel was difficult for her, and I understood. 4 years after leaving, I was promoted to regional director, and she told me about her book club and her garden, while I told her about work promotions and weekend trips. We had monthly video calls, and the conversations were good and genuine. At 35, I was managing teams across 3 countries and making more money than I'd ever imagined. I had friends who felt like family, and I had a life I'd built entirely on my own terms. Sometimes I thought about Emma's text, the one that had changed everything, and the entitled assumption that I'd given up my life for hers without question. The expectation that had been so deeply ingrained in our family dynamic that she hadn't even considered I might say no. I didn't regret what I'd done, not for a second. Setting that boundary, making that choice, signing that contract had been the hardest and best decision of my life. My family had accused me of being selfish, of abandoning them in their hour of need, but I hadn't abandoned anyone. I'd finally stopped abandoning myself because you can't save people who won't save themselves, and you can't sacrifice yourself for someone else's growth. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is take a step back and let people face the consequences of their actions. Emma needed to learn responsibility. Mom had to learn that love isn't the same as enabling, and I needed to learn that my dreams and happiness were just as important as anyone else's. The boundaries I set weren't walls, but bridges to healthier relationships, even if it meant everything falling apart first. Emma sent me a photo last month. She was standing in front of her own salon, keys in hand, having saved for 3 years and purchased it outright. "Did it myself," she wrote. "No one's money but mine. I wish you were here to celebrate." "I'm so proud of you," I replied, and I meant it wholeheartedly. That night, I stood on my balcony overlooking the Singapore skyline, the lights of the city spreading out like stars. My phone buzzed with messages from friends making plans for the weekend. Jacob was coming over later with Thai takeout. Nina wanted to know if I was free to go climbing on Saturday, and my life was full. Not with obligation, guilt, or sacrifice, but with joy, choice, and the kind of freedom that comes from finally putting yourself first. Somewhere across the world, my family was learning to stand on their own feet. They were learning to be whole without using me as a crutch, and it had taken an ocean between us to make it possible. I didn't resent them anymore. I didn't even feel angry. I felt free.